I believe we're live. I think I've said that at the start of every one of these, but I'm just checking. Okay, so this is the discussion for the June 5th rotation. So my intention for this rotation was kind of albums that went out of people's comfort zones. So I have a metalcore slash deathcore album. I have a kind of emo singer-songwriter guitar on a lonely stage album, and then finally in a kind of throwback to the 80s Nuevo set, kind of an 80s synth pop sounding, almost driving down the California coast album. Um, three of which not tend not to be the type of thing that most people sit down and listen to. So the three albums, Johnny Truant's In the Library of Horrific Events, Valaska's Natural Habitat, and Canary Girl's Everything is Changing. So the other thing these three have in common, aside from, well, really the only thing these three have in common, is the fact that they are criminally unknown. The most popular of these three being Johnny Truant, but even then, not terribly well known, which is unfortunate because, as I mentioned, all three of these bands should get a lot more attention. So what about this first one, Johnny Truant's In the Library of Horrific Events? As I mentioned, a deathcore slash metalcore. I would almost call them grindcore in some parts, but then again, also groove metal. But this is falling down the rabbit hole of metal subgenres that you could literally go on for hours just describing one album. But I would say this one is much more deathcore, metalcore type area. And when you get into these types of albums, you either get one of three things, and unfortunately for metalcore and deathcore, there's really only these three things. You either get politically charged, kind of try hard lyrics. You get the black metal style, the church is the worst thing in the world, and burn churches type thing. Or you get just generic Cannibal Corpse style, how grotesque can we be? And Johnny Truant kind of mixes the bag between all three of those, really. There's some tracks that are very much anti-church, and then there are others that are just how brutal can we be. There isn't too much politics going on at all with the lyrics in this album. But then again, if you're new to deathcore, you're probably not going to be able to understand the lyrics at all. So really, you have to enjoy the the music and treat the vocals like another instrument in the background rather than trying to interpret the lyrics. Otherwise, you're just going to not be able to enjoy it as your brain tries to parse the the syllables with each growl, which doesn't work out too well. Um, so let's go down the list of what I liked and didn't like about this album. Um, Pretty short on the latter, as I quite love this album. So let's switch over to Spotify here in a memento. Okay, so let's take a look at this album. Again, on Spotify, 272 followers, which is criminal. These are both of these albums are really good. I haven't listened to evidently this 2002 album, which might not even be them. I'm not even sure because but evidently it is. They broke up in 2008. No Tears for the Creatures was their last album, but in particular these two are the ones that I listen to the most. But just this album, In the Library of Perfect Events. So firstly, it starts off with one of my favorite song titles ever, I Love You Even Though You're a Zombie Now. And it is a very strong start to the album. You're not going to be able to hit play, but you can play this on your own and follow along. Um, it almost starts off as a uh, Devil Driver, Sepultura type groove metal sound, which is not really indicative of the rest of the album, but it definitely hits hard. That distorted guitar really rips into you, um, and if I could describe the sound of this band as it plays, is very much the when you pull back a saw on a rough piece of wood. That's kind of that's what it feels like, if that makes any sense at all. Uh, but it both sounds and feels like that. So the next track, The Bloodening, is Uh, One of my favorite songs on this album, and one of the few instances on this album that has what you could even remotely call clean vocals. It's really just a non-guttural scream, whereas 90% of the time, well, really 99% of the time, it is that guttural kind of growling death metal type sound. But I wouldn't call this band death metal. It's very much deathcore, metalcore type sound, without getting into the details of what would differentiate those two. So the Bloodening, again, probably one of my favorites on the album. And in addition to being one of the few that has clean vocals, it has this almost post-rock instrumental break in the middle of the song, just to lend itself to the breakdown, which is, I guess, one of the few things that differentiates deathcore and metalcore from death metal and just black metal in general. Is that you would not find a black metal band or a death metal band with a breakdown in the middle of the song, or at least as soon as they add the breakdown, that's when you would switch their name to or their genre to deathcore. It's kind of indicative of the genre. Um, so that's it for the Bloodening, and skipping the realist surrealist because it doesn't uh, stay with me too much. The next one is Dirty Vampire Feeding Frenzy. Um, really great guitars to open this track. Again, that kind of saw-like guitar sound, and the vocals just really are aggressive in this track. It's this album as a whole is, if you're first getting into death metal, there's a great intro because it's not such a Cannibal Corpse style, um, just pure aggression, and there's nothing but, and it doesn't stop ever, and it just doesn't let up. This is definitely an aggressive record, but it's not so much that you can't almost tap your foot to it, which is really weird to say if you've heard this album, which again I highly recommend. Um, the next is Throne Vertigo, which kind of goes up in the register a bit on the guitars on this track, and gets almost melodic. Not in the vocals. The vocals still stay really aggressive, but the guitars really deliver the melody in the beginning of this track. Um, and the other instance of the pseudo clean vocals appear on this track as well. Um, and then the next two tracks, Vultures and A Day in the Death, probably the most aggressive two songs on this album, and they almost go hand in hand. Not lyrically or vocally per se, but the mood of the tracks kind of blend in with each other. So Vulture starts off with this kind of slow, um, again, almost post-rock instrumental intro, and it just kind of it builds up to the absolutely brutal breakdown at the start of A Day in the Death. Um, so actually, let's go back here. Yeah. So again, I'm going to draw a comparison to, um, damn it, Devil Driver. So if you think of, that's why it's on random. Devil Driver has a track called Hold Back the Day that has this very um, kind of light intro that leads to this massive breakdown. Another one of these um, um, artists is, see if I can remember off the top of my head. I am not going to remember. Let's see if I actually have them listed here. Heaven Shall Burn is another one where on the Iconoclast album they have this Awoken track, which is just an instrumental, quiet track, and then Enzyte just immediately starts off with this brutal, aggressive kind of punch in the face, and the two tracks from Johnny Truant do the same, where Vultures is this kind of very quiet, almost peaceful post-rock track leading right into this super aggressive punch in the face with A Day in the Death. Um, and for me, if you see a band that does that live, it's just goosebumps every time. It's an amazing feeling. It's one of the reasons I love this genre of music. A lot of like old school metal fans will say like, no, breakdowns aren't my thing. It's Ruin's music, and I fucking love it. It's I can't get enough of it. Uh, and then Necropolis Junction, I wouldn't say it's the best follow-up to A Day in the Death, simply because it's so aggressive, um, led in by vultures. But it is a great track. Um, it's almost the mood of the track is almost sad, where that sounds strange that these guttural vocals could even sound sad, but um, it 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 does. You'd have to listen to it to understand what it sounds like. And then I Exploder, again, these kind of soft post-rocky type guitars leading into a very brutal breakdown at the beginning of the vocals when they break in. Um, what another one of my favorites. So the Bloodening, Dirty Vampire Feeding Frenzy, and I Exploder, A Day in the Death as well being my favorite tracks on this album. Um, if there was any tracks I would say that weren't my favorite, it would be the ones that um, I didn't mention. I still like the tracks. It's just they don't stick with me. So Realist, Surrealist, and Throne Vertigo, and Necropolis Junction, and Footprints in the Thunder rather. Great tracks. It's just I don't particularly remember them when they play. So that's about it for that album. If you like this type of sound, just general deathcore in general. So the rotation leading up to, or the rotation following this, which is rotation number uh, 6 question mark. Yes, um, I'm featuring a couple uh, djent and uh, prog metal deathcore bands. One of them being Born of Osiris, the other one being Veil of Maya, um, and Shai Hulud, not really up there. The Human Abstract, um, on their Digital Veil album and on their Nocturne album, kind of the same thing. Some more clean vocals on Nocturne and from this band in general. Um, but that's about as far as I would venture. After the Burial, kind of, but they're not really in the same kind of place. So let's see who else here. That Spotify is terrible at getting these similar bands right. Acacia Strain would be a good one. Um, Within the Ruins, maybe, but not really. This or the Apocalypse would be a good one. Um, so the general deathcore, uh, metalcore genre. But be careful when you get into the metalcore, because then you might get into a band like August Burns Red or Parkway Drive that is much more almost a party metal core really type band, where it's not that guttural death metal, deathcore vocals. It's almost like if you could say pop metal. It's not really, because I love those bands and that would be an insult. Um, but it's a completely different genre. So if you like these guys, go into that route. Go into the Human Abstract and Die Artist Murder and Acacia Strain. Um, and there's one other that is escaping me right now. Yeah, that is the band I'm thinking of. Specifically Wormwood, where their track Beast could be on the same album. So that's it for that band. So let's go back to the rotation here. Oops. So the next album is Valaska's Natural Habitat. Again, a criminally under-listened album. And ignore these related artists because they are nothing alike. It's just that there are so few people that listen to this band that Spotify can't get a good feel for who they sound like. So this is the first and currently only album from Dave Valdez, and this was produced by Aaron Marsh of Copeland, I believe. I'm gonna get that wrong. I'm pretty sure that it's Good Old War, not Copeland. I'm gonna check quickly. Last FM has been having issues, so it might be, yeah, Copeland. And if you are familiar with Copeland, you can definitely tell that it was produced by Aaron Marsh. It is the Conor Oberst Bright Eyes, kind of emo folk with guy on a lonely stage and a guitar type music. I happen to think this was a really well done album, um, and it is kind of generic, but given that there are so few bands that while are in that same genre don't sound enough like that Bright Eyes type emo music that I really dig. Um, so in particular, the tracks that really uh, sit well with me are On the Surface and Spanish Needles and Wildfire. So a couple funny things about Spanish Needles is that because there's so little about this band out there, they don't publish a lyric sheet, and by they I mean him. There's only one person, so we don't really know the lyrics to all these songs. And Spanish Needles is, as far as I know, the only track where Dave Valdez has come out and said exactly what the song is about. He did this in a live Vimeo session. If you just search for Valaska Vimeo, where he explains that Spanish Needles is a track about a high school friend of his that killed their father with a weed whacker, evidently, which suffice to say is an um, interesting subject for a song, but it is very much a track that deals with death as a whole. And one of the songs that stays with me a bit more lyrically. And then Wildfire and a couple other tracks in this album, like Hammer and Nails, are almost early Death Cab songs to me. They're very much like a song right off paths with a different vocalist, which I dig quite a lot. I quite enjoy those albums. But really, if you like Natural Habitat, um, for one, share it all over the place because a lot more people need to hear about Valaska. Um, and B, check out Bright Eyes for one. Check out Good Old War, which is a much more um, kind of poppy uh, um, band in the same vein as um, uh, Connor Oberst and almost Desaparecidos type sound, but not as down in the dumps as Valaska is as far as mood goes. Natural Habitat is definitely an emo album. As much as it might try to lean towards folk in some type of sound, it is very much an emo Bright Eyes album. Or really, Copeland, given who produced it, who is a great band. But they are super emo. If you just broke up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, go listen to Copeland and and weep it out, because that is essentially what they are there for. You Are My Sunshine in particular, just some man. Those are some emo songs right there. If you ever heard one, um, and that's probably the closest band. So uh, Copeland and Good Old War and kind of sort of Bon Iver, but not really. I mean, it's Bon Iver is so much more. I don't want to say overproduced, but there's so much more uh, instrumentation on a Bon Iver track than there would be on a Valaska track. But either way, definitely have a listen to them. These guys share the album. I don't even think you can buy it. I think it's download for free on Bandcamp. Let me check really quickly. It might be available for purchase. Yeah, so you can buy the album. Definitely buy the album. It's only on Bandcamp that I know of. It might be on Amazon if you take a look. But they did not break up, unlike Johnny Truant, who has been defunct for the past 6 years. So no new music coming from Johnny Truant, but maybe another album coming from Alaska, which I really look forward to. I haven't heard anything yet, but when I do, I will be super excited. So that's it for that album. Let's take a look at the last one. So Canary Girls, Everything is Changing. This is kind of a cheat on the list. This was an album by a former coworker of mine, um, who named Bill Eager, who does solo work as well as he had a band called the Social Scientists, and then this band Canary Girls, who released this album for free on Bandcamp. I think it's just canarygirls.bandcamp.com. Let me just take a look here. Yep, canarygirls.bandcamp.com. You can download this album for free. For some reason, I really wanted to throw money at him when he first released this, but it's up there for free. I highly recommend you download this if you like that type of sound. So in addition to Bill Eager, this 5 tracks on this album also feature Bernice Rattle, who really lends some very nice harmonies to a few of these tracks, or to really every track she's on. In particular, the tracks I cannot get enough of, Waves and Stations, Everything is Changing, and Laser Prom. And then Orange is just really beautiful. 20 Nothing is another great track. Night Court, again. This album is really unapologetically an 80s synth pop track. I mean, Laser Prom is about a laser prom. It is freaking amazing. And it sounds like it says on the tin. It's exactly what it sounds like. So if you dive back into our rotation from, was it last week or the week before? Yeah, the week before, our 80s Nuevo. Very much in the same vein, very much more similar to Anorak and Tesla Boy than to Chad Valley. I wouldn't say Everything is Changing is a parody of 80s synth pop or 80s new wave, but it is so right in that groove that it's just barely away from going over the top, and it falls right in that perfect area where you can it's kitschy enough that you can still take it seriously without thinking it's a parody, and it's just incredibly entertaining. Bill did a really great job on all the production on this track, and it's just really, really deserves a lot more attention, along with his other band, Social Scientists, which may or may not be on Spotify. Let's take a look. I know there was another band called Social Scientists, but nope, they are not on Spotify. Are they on Bandcamp? Taking a look now. Maybe, maybe not. A different band called Social Scientists is on Bandcamp, but it is not them. So I think they might be on MySpace because they are from a while ago. If not, Google around, try to find it. You'll probably find it, and have a listen to that one as well. That one is more of a like general rock, not an 80s nuevo, but it's a different sound to what this album is. So that's it for those these three the 3 albums for this week. So what do we got coming up in this week's rotation? We have Born of Osiris's The New Rain, Animals as Leaders self-titled album, and then Veil of Maya's The Common Man's Collapse. So these 3 both are in that djent or deathcore type genre. So if you liked Johnny Truant, you might like Born of Osiris. Born of Osiris and Veil of Maya, very much a melodic deathcore, breakdown heavy. There are some synths in Born of Osiris. They're almost an electronic deathcore band, if that makes any sense. So they've gotten some heat about that because they are on Sumerian Records, who tends to get some heat in the metal world for kind of commercializing metal bands that previously were very, very hardcore, which I personally haven't seen, and hopefully isn't the case because they just picked up the band Darkest Hour, who I am a huge fan of, and hopefully Sumerian doesn't ruin their next album. So we're going to take a look at Born of Osiris, Veil of Maya. Again, the deathcore, breakdown heavy, almost djent type music, and then Animals as Leaders, who is just straight up djent prog metal, um, with the unbelievable guitarist Tosin Abasi as the frontman, featuring the band has two 7-string guitarists that play at the same time, which is just, if you want face melting guitar, this week's rotation, get into Animals as Leaders, listen to their other stuff because I'm only featuring one of their albums this week. So take a listen to their most recent, Joy of Motion, which they just released a couple weeks ago, I believe, if not last week. Listen to Weightless because you'll definitely enjoy that. But I featured their first album because it just has a ton of songs that I really, really dig. Not to say I don't like the other ones, but I was introduced to their self-titled first, and I fell in love with it. So that's about it. I will see you guys in the discussion next week, and I hope you enjoy it. Talk to you later. Later.